Okay, maybe you have, maybe you haven't seen the local sports headline last Saturday. This is a story people are still talking about days later. The Crispus Attucks girls basketball team, they beat Washington 115-5.
Ooh.
115-5.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it.
Today, we asked Jake Query, co-host of the Midday Sports Talk Show on 107.5 The Fan, to help us out about what happened here and also whether it should have happened at all. Thanks for coming on to talk with us about this.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. That's a good question as to whether or not this should happen, because there are a couple of ways that you can look at this, and one of them would be how do you avoid it, right? If you're trying to teach young people how to play the game of basketball or how to be competitive and the things that come with sports, how do you tell them to lighten up and kind of call off the dogs, which I think probably should have been applied here, but sportsmanship has to come into play as well. So it becomes kind of a slippery slope.
We're seeing some video here from Crispus Attucks, not from that particular game, but from another game a couple years ago. They're in the same conference, right?
Correct.
Capital City Conference? Okay. And they agreed to play each other.
Well,
right?
so these are both, and this is the thing to me, Dustin, that's interesting. So these are two schools with Attucks and Indianapolis, Washington, that, they're both IPS schools. They're schools that traditionally, I think, have had to battle with the same challenges, just in terms of resources and a lot of different areas of it, right? Attucks has obviously done a great job, and I've got a lot of respect for what Attucks has been able to do to build athletically. Washington themselves has had games this year where they've gone against schools that are facing equal challenge on the other side and had, a great disparity here in terms of the talent. The thing to me was simply the point of, when you look at the IHSAA, which the principal part of high school athletics is to learn overcoming adversity. So in this case, Washington's overcoming that, right? But also to learn sportsmanship and to know kind of when to say when. And to me, Attucks is up 90 points with 5 minutes to go in the game. They're still running a full court trap. They're still shooting threes. I think you can still overgo the principles of learning and playing the game the right way without necessarily doing it in an effort to expand upon the lead.
Somebody on your tweet that you sent out about this, they said that maybe they should have called the game at the half and then they could have run a joint practice. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, we're talking about children here. We're talking about young women here. When do you push and try to teach a tough lesson, or do you kind of pull back and let it go?
There's precedent for it. There have been stories in the past of like baseball or softball teams where they turned it into a joint practice session, for example. In this case, Attucks' responsibility from the coaching standpoint is to help Attucks become the best team they can be. But at the same time, I don't know what you are going to learn when you're ahead 90 points, right? Yeah. So perhaps that was a missed opportunity. I think the encouraging thing here is that the athletic department at Attucks and the IHSAA have both said, look, this might be a teaching point that was missed. So how do we go forward from this and work through it so that we are doing exactly what we're talking about, maybe giving some of the freshman players. Now, Attucks did eventually pull a lot of their starters off of the floor,
okay,
right? But I think that schematically speaking, maybe you go to something that does allow a little bit more leniency for Washington. Now, some could say that's unfair to Washington because those girls also should, over the course and totality of the game, be treated as such that they're going through a normal game circumstance.
Yeah.
But I just think at some point you have to go into a common sense placement here. The reality is, in life, high school sports is to teach you what life is all about. Sometimes in life there's a chance to be competitive. Other times there's a chance to be empathetic. I think in this situation, the opportunity to teach empathy might have been passed on.
Gracious winners, gracious losers.
Yep.
Gracious winners, gracious losers. Okay, character building. I've been there. I was on the basketball team and was not good. It happens. All right. Thank you so much, Jake Query from 107.5 The Fan. Make sure you are tuning in to him midday. Thank you.